The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. And today we're discussing the sixth Doctor story, The Ultimate Foe. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to stick around. We've got some great feedback from listeners on our most recent episode, the 12th Doctor Robot of Sherwood episode. We'll also be talking about some Doctor Who news. That's right, news of upcoming productions. So that's pretty fun.
But we're saving that for the end for people who don't want spoilers and speculation and stuff like that.
Right, right. You stick around till after we've talked about Ultimate Foe. Be sure to write an Apple Podcast review of The Secrets of Doctor Who. Take a moment and go do that. That's a huge benefit to the show and to you because it grows our audience and helps expose us to more people. And also recommend to your Doctor Who loving friends. We really appreciate when you do that. Another show on the network you're sure to enjoy is The Secrets of Technology. And you can find out more about that at sqpn.com/technology.
Where you can learn how to build your very own sonic screwdriver.
Yes, we should do that, an episode on that someday. That would be fun. All right. So we are talking about The Ultimate Foe, which is the end of the Trial of a Time Lord series. It's the end of the Sixth Doctor's time on TV. And it's a two-episode series, two-episode story. Jimmy, could you give us a recap of what happens in this one?
The trial of the Sixth Doctor reaches its conclusion with the Doctor trying to prove that the evidence against him in the Time Lord's computer matrix has been tampered with. The Doctor gets unexpected help in proving this when the Master appears on the courtroom's view screen, revealing that he is inside the matrix, thus demonstrating that it can be compromised, as the Doctor has been yelling. But it wasn't the Master who faked the evidence. Instead, it's revealed that the court's prosecutor, the Valeyard, did this on behalf of the Time Lord's corrupt High Council, and that the High Council set up this show trial to frame the Doctor to cover up their own misdeeds. It's also revealed that the Valeyard is a future version of the Doctor, and the High Council made a deal with him to give him the rest of the Doctor's regenerations. The Valeyard then makes a break for it and enters the Matrix, so the Doctor and Sabalam Glitz follow him in, while companion Mel pleads with the High Court on the Doctor's behalf. As in any Matrix-based story, we have lots of illusions and mindless running around. However, the upshot is that the Doctor defeats and seemingly kills the Valeyard. When he emerges from the Matrix, he learns that the High Council has been deposed, that Peri survived Mind Warp and is now the warrior queen of King Irkanos, and Mel takes the Doctor off in the TARDIS for his final adventure with carrot juice, carrot juice, carrot juice. At the end, we learn that the Valeyard actually survived and is now impersonating the Keeper of the Matrix. He breaks the fourth wall by turning to the audience and laughing maniacally. The end.
So once again, we learn that it's not the crime; it's the cover-up. That the High Council,
as Richard Nixon told David Frost.
That's right. The High Council is covering up its failure to keep the Matrix secure, and with a frame-up job for the Doctor,
among other things.
Before we get into what happens in the episode itself, I thought it would be interesting to talk a little bit about some of the behind the scenes of this production of this episode, because like we said, it's the end of the Sixth Doctor time on TV. It's the end of season 23. And it's also the final contribution to Doctor Who of scriptwriter Robert Holmes, who died during the writing and production of this story, these two episodes.
Yeah. So Robert Holmes was meant to write, so these are in the season, these are episodes 13 and 14. And Robert Holmes was commissioned to write them both, but his health was rapidly deteriorating. He managed to write episode 13, and he had notes for episode 14 and what was supposed to happen, which I can actually tell us. But in terms of what happened, he died before he was able to complete episode 14. And so script editor Eric Sayward went to finish it, but he then got into a huge battle with John Nathan Turner, who was the producer of the show. Eric Sayward had been unhappy with the direction of the show. In particular, he didn't think Colin Baker made a good doctor, that he was miscast. And he also was very much a fan of Robert Holmes and wanted to see Holmes's original vision for the story executed. However, John Nathan Turner was very concerned that the way it was originally planned to end, it would give the BBC a great opportunity to cancel the show. And so he insisted that the ending be changed. Eric Sayward insisted that they honor Holmes's plan. Sayward then left the show, taking his rights to the script with him. And so John Nathan Turner at the last minute brought in Pippin Jane Baker, who had written The Vervoid Crisis, and said, "Hi, here's the script for episode 13. For legal reasons, I can't give you any direction for what episode 14 needs to contain, because that could get us sued if one of the previous elements showed up in it and you had seen the notes or the script for it. So have fun making up something completely new."
Yeah. And you could tell there is a difference. Like the way 13 ends and 14 begins, you could tell it's almost like The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Like, this is how this one ends. We're going back in another direction. Yeah, that was kind of interesting to see. What was the original script?
I've seen different accounts of it, but according to TARDIS Wikia, in Robert Holmes and Eric Sayward's original conception, the first episode revealed that the Valeyard was in fact the Doctor's final incarnation, and they made that a little more ambiguous in dialogue, but they gesture in that direction. The finale then opened with the Master saving the Doctor from the quicksand, which is different than what they did, while the Valeyard kidnapped Glitz, which is also different. The Doctor encountered Popelwick again, who led him into a trap baited with an illusory Mel. Popelwick, too, was revealed as a construct of J.J. Chambers, who in turn was unmasked as the Valeyard. While news reached the courtroom of the High Council's mass resignation, the Master warned that the Valeyard had materialized his TARDIS around a time vent in the Matrix. So now we're going really different. If the vent were to be opened for too long, there would be catastrophic ramifications for the space-time continuum. The Valeyard, shown to be a pitiable old man afraid of dying, planned to use this threat to force the Time Lords to grant him the Doctor's remaining regenerations. The Master revealed that he was hired by the High Council to murder the Doctor in exchange for a pardon, but had now decided not to follow through. The Doctor bluffed his way into the Valeyard's TARDIS just as the Valeyard opened the time vent door. Struggling, the Doctor and the Valeyard plunged into the time vent while the Master had Glitz seal the door, saving the universe but trapping the Doctor for all eternity. Hence, John Nathan Turner's fears, heroic sacrifice of the Doctor locked in eternal struggle with his evil self. That would be a great point to end the show.
Right. Yeah, I can see that. Given that the BBC had been trying to cancel the show and would eventually do so a couple years later. Yeah, I can see why you'd be sensitive to that. Now, don't give them any opportunity. So this episode we actually did get, we talked about how the Doctor continues to maintain that the Matrix has been tampered with, and I love this the sheer arrogance of the Gallifreyans, of the Time Lords. That's certainly it's just impossible. The fact that you maintain this is ridiculous. I'm going to hold you in contempt of court for even suggesting something so ridiculous. And then the Master shows up and says, "Hi,
well, I'm speaking from the Matrix."
Yeah. Well, then you've got the mystery artifact, the Exarassalon of the week, the key of Rassilon, which happens to be a bog standard skeleton key.
Right. That
and it's like nobody. And of course, I even just pointed out in the episode. Of course, nobody could just copy it. Oh no, it's never left my premises.
Well, the fact is that it's hanging on a hook on the front of his garment, and it's like you could take a photo of that. I mean, like you don't need to be a Time Lord to do this. You could go down to Ace Hardware with a photo and have them make a key based off the photo. It's just like, duh. Nice security you got there.
I assume it's like one of those keys they have for your car now where there's electronics embedded in it, but
sure. I suppose. But however it was, the master managed to get a hold of it. You know,
or you could just be, like the master and just pilot your TARDIS right into it.
right.
Which apparently it should have some kind of controls against that, but I guess not.
Well, the master has penetrated the Matrix multiple times. I mean, most recently we saw that in the Timeless Children.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
But he's actually done it before this episode, back in Tom Baker's time, in the episode right after Sarah Jane leaves, The Deadly Assassin. It's another master inside the Matrix story. And so it's what the Doctor should have done was say, oh, y'all remember the Deadly Assassin incident, where I got elected president of Gallifrey and the master was in the Matrix then? How impenetrable was it then?
Right. Yeah. So.
Oh, we beefed up the security. We added McAfee after that.
So, and then we have Sabalon Glips and Mel arriving on the station together. The same way that the Doctor arrived in these pods. Now, just as a recall, I actually had to look it up because we're doing things out of order, and so I had to remember, when did Mel show up? She showed up for the first time in the previous story, The Terror of the Vervoids.
Right.
Mm-hmm. We don't know how the Doctor and Mel met, right?
No. They never got around to telling us on screen because Mel is there for a few adventures with the Seventh Doctor, but then goes, and they never revealed it on television. However, Big Finish has.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are there other companions who just kind of show up? We see them in mid journey with the Doctor.
Mel is unusual. Mel is sort of the proto River Song in that she was introduced as this is a companion from your future Doctor. And so that's why they were trying to be high concept there, which I give them credit for. Unfortunately, with all the turmoil on the show and everything, Mel didn't really get her just desserts. In fact, her last name is never revealed on screen.
Right. That's true. I mean, I feel like she gets a bad rap. Like I think in these episodes, they make a comment about her voice even.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's a bit of a bad rap for the actress. I think she does a fair job.
Oh, no, I like the actress, but she's kind of hampered because apparently Mel, as she's portrayed, the way she's written is almost a parody of the actor's public persona. And so, because she had this like background in theater and she played Peter Pan.
Right. And
she was known for being perky and they accentuate, her perkiness. And so she was perceived as kind of a self-parody. But actually, I think, not knowing her background, I think she's just fine. I don't like it when they give her bad lines of dialogue, like all the hackneyed dialogue in episode 14.
Yeah.
Right.
But the performance, I think, is fine.
Well, and they had to make sure to get one of her screeches in because, she's known for her lungs, too, for being able to belt those out.
Yeah.
It's interesting, too, is she's her background, she's supposed to be like a computer scientist, a computer programmer, something like that.
Which comes out hilariously in episode 14, where they're in the Matrix, they're in this dystopian nightmare version of Dickensian London.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in some kind of like shop, machine shop. And she opens a door, and there's some kind of allegedly futuristic device behind it.
Yes.
And her immediate impression, she's immediately very impressed by the fact it's a megabyte modem.
Yeah.
And, a whole megabyte. Wow.
It's like, yeah, okay, that didn't age well. Not only would megabyte modems be amazingly slow by modern standards, but this thing isn't a modem.
I know.
The doctor then says it's a maser or has a maser in it. And then the Valeyard explains that it's a particle disseminator, and it's going to disseminate subatomic particles in a destructive way. And it's like, modems have nothing to do with that.
Yep.
Literally nothing.
That's right.
You know, I will give them credit, though, when they wrote this, you know, to have a 14.4 kilobit modem was fast.
Even. Yeah. You're right.
I mean, it was fast for 14.4 back then. So, those of us who remember dial-up days, that would have been impressive in 1986 when this came out.
Yeah. I mean, even slower, maybe. All three of my older siblings all worked for Motorola at the time and sold and serviced modems. 300 bauds were at least big boxes. So, yeah. Anyway, the master has proved that the matrix can be entered, and he doesn't want the Valeyard to beat the doctor instead of him. And that seems to be his motivation. And that's why he sent Mel and Sabalon Glitz to kind of put a monkey, a spanner in the works to keep
a monkey wrench in America.
Right. I was trying to remember the word. I'm stuck in Britishisms. And the Valeyard objects to Sabalon giving his testimony because he's a criminal. And I like the fact that the doctor points out just because he's a criminal doesn't mean that he's always lying, that his testimony is still valid.
Yeah.
Criminals testify in court all the time, although they are then impeached by the fact they're a criminal, and then the debate ensues among the jury, are they believable on this occasion?
Right. And so this is when Glitz we basically get an info dump on what's been going on in this whole trial of a Time Lord in the background. The Glitz says that there were the sleeper astronauts from Mysterious Planet, the first story of this season, that they had stolen information from the Matrix to take back to the Andromeda Galaxy. Oh my gosh, I can say words. And this was all in Mysterious Planet, and they then hid on Earth, and then the Time Lords destroyed Earth to protect their secrets, and then moved it to hide it and renamed it Ravalox and all this other stuff. Does any of this continue to be part of? I know Doctor Who canon is a fuzzy concept, but does any of this come up in later Doctor Who? This idea that Earth was destroyed and moved?
Not on the TV show.
Nope.
Okay.
I mean, there are later references to the Great Disaster, but we already knew about that from Ark in Space.
Okay. And this is about the same time when the Master reveals that the Valeyard is the Doctor. So we should talk about the Valeyard. Is the Valeyard really supposed to be the final regeneration of the Doctor, where all of his evil character traits have kind of concentrated?
That was the original plan that Holmes had, but they ambiguify that in episode 13. The specific line, and I wrote it down exactly. So the Master first says that he's an amalgamation of the Doctor's evil aspects, and then he says somewhere between your 12th and final incarnations.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so under the canon at the time, your 13th incarnation was your last. And so they're being vague about it. The way it's stated, somewhere between your 12th and 13th incarnations could mean it's one of the two. Or a theory that some fans came up with, maybe he's a watcher. Because when the fourth Doctor regenerated into the fifth, there was this sort of future-y version of the Doctor known as the Watcher who showed up and then merged with Tom Baker to become the fifth Doctor. And so maybe the Valeyard is like it's not quite the 13th incarnation. Maybe it's a Watcher that precedes the 13th incarnation. But the bottom line is he wants the Doctor's lives. And this raises questions. Both under canon at the time and canon today. So under canon at the time, if the High Council had gone to the last Watcher or the last incarnation of the Doctor, and said, we want you to do something for us. We want you to prosecute your former self, and we'll give you his lives. Doesn't that immediately create a really bad paradox? I mean, you're not supposed to cross your own timelines, much less how do you take your own past and put it in your future without creating the mother of all grandfather paradoxes?
Right.
And I love that phrase, by the way, the mother of all grandfather paradoxes. And so that makes not very much sense. Also, think about it from the Valeyard's perspective. They're offering to give you the lives of they're offering to give you some former lives. Why not ask for them all? Go all the way back to William Hartnell. Why are you picking on your 6th former incarnation and getting back 6 lives when you could be getting back 12?
Right.
So those don't seem to make much sense. And then under current canon, where it has now been established that the earlier conception was true and the Doctor is not limited to 13 incarnations, and has in fact had many more than that, why would the Valeyard and the High Council frame it in this way if he can presumably regenerate indefinitely? And I suppose the answer would be that the knowledge of his past had been deleted from his memory and was top secret, so even the High Council might not know about it. Or if they knew about it, they just wanted to manipulate him. But the Valeyard himself did not have those memories, and so did not realize that he had lived before William Hartnell.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which, the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, did not know.
Right. Yeah, that's yeah. Well, maybe we'll come back to that because I get some thoughts, but I want to talk about some other things before we come back to that. We did talk about a Big Finish story, by the way, where we had the trial of the Valeyard.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yep.
We see what happens
That was good.
when the tables are turned. So go back and check that out if you haven't listened to that. So the Doctor chases the Valeyard into the Matrix along with Glitz. Glitz goes along with him. And mentioned, I thought it was like a Victorian world, but it could have been Dickensian even earlier. But this strange, dark world.
And it's pretty effective. I mean, it's nighttime. It's this grimy, dingy-looking part of London, apparently. There's a wall, a notification hanging on the wall about a current cholera outbreak. It's like, oh, nice. We're in the middle of a cholera outbreak. Oh, joy.
Of course. And this
and it is Victorian also.
Yeah.
Because when the Master's TARDIS materializes, he's got a functioning chameleon circuit. And so at one point they're on a beach in the Matrix and they're being attacked by nerve gas, and they run into this beach shack, which turns out to be the Master's TARDIS. And then he materializes it in the Nightmare London, and it's a statue of Queen Victoria sitting on a pedestal, and they come out of the pedestal.
I kind of wish that the Doctor's TARDIS could do chameleon things occasionally. I love the blue box, but it is kind of fun to just see it become different things.
Well,
it has a few times.
We've talked about that in the sixth Doctor episode where he tries to fix the chameleon circuit and ends up being like this real, ornate organ in the middle of a junkyard, things like that.
Right. That's right. I remember that. By the way, the location for this Victorian London at night is the Gladstone Pottery Museum in Stoke-on-Trent. So it's apparently a well-known place. So Glitz has come along because he's got a message from the Master to the Doctor that says that he can find the Valeyard in the Matrix at a place called the Fantasy Factory. Meanwhile, the Master's still on screen at the trial. Mel didn't get into the Matrix behind them, but the Master's still there, and he's explaining that not everything that we saw in the previous episodes actually happened, and so we're kind of rewriting some of the season as we go, which the Doctor's been saying. Not everything that we've seen is actually what happened. And for example, Perry didn't die. Perry actually survived and is married to
King Urkanos.
King Urkanos, yes.
Brian Blessed.
Brian Blessed. And we do get a little bit of visual of them together. She's like a warrior queen now, I guess.
And that
Although
was,
she's not dressed as one in the clip we see because it was filmed. I'm sure that was unused footage from Mind Warp.
Yes.
actually, I thought that was right out of Mind Warp. I thought
It,
there
it
was,
may be, yeah.
I thought it was literally they just took like a little 5-second snippet where he put his hand on her shoulder and made that being the
So we have the master talking about how he's doing all of this because he knows the doctor has to die in either case, whether it's the Villiard or the doctor. So he's happy with the whatever results. Plus, he loves the opportunity to undermine the council.
Yeah, and also maybe they'll kill each other.
Right.
I wanted to mention, though, Nicole Bryant was very unhappy that they retconned her death.
Oh.
Because she thought shaving her head and having an alien slug in her brain who's like a space Nazi yelling and then getting blown to bits by Brian Blessed's ray gun. She thought that was a great exit for her character. and it's like, what? I'm alive? No, that was an awesome exit.
yeah. Went out in a blaze of glory or shame.
Yeah. And then they retcon it. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I would be annoyed too. So you mentioned that the doctor goes to the factory, and then there's a whole like bureaucracy in Mr. What's his name? Popelwick, that he has to go through and procedures and stuff. And I'm like, this is like hell. Like this is what hell would be like, is being stuck in an eternal bureaucracy of procedures and whatnot. And that's really kind of, I think, what the Villiard has built here is sort of a hell, or even just a really bad purgatory for the doctor to exist in.
By the way, Mr. Popelwick, if he looks familiar to people who like British comedy, is because he was Onslow on Keeping Up Appearances, which if you haven't seen it and you like British humor, it's absolutely it's fantastic. But he was kind of a redneck, what we would call a redneck here in the United States. He'd wear like the white tank top undershirts all the time.
Oh, okay.
And while his sister-in-law wanted to be like proper, she wanted to be a lady, and it was it's quite the show. But it was played by Jeffrey Hughes. He also, I didn't realize this, voiced Paul McCartney in Yellow Submarine.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
The movie Yellow Submarine he voiced Paul McCartney. So I didn't know that. That was kind of.
Yeah, in his sister in Keeping Up Appearances or whatever is Hyacinth Bucket, but because she wants to affect high class mannerisms and so forth, and affect a high class culture, she doesn't want to be called Hyacinth Bucket. She wants it to be Hyacinth Bouquet.
Yes.
That's good.
And her long-suffering husband, Richard, we've seen in New Who.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
one thing. So I don't like I just don't. This is a holodeck plot.
Yeah.
And I don't like holodeck plots. But I will give him credit for the Nightmare London is effective, and not just because of the visuals, but also they do things on the soundtrack to help make it creepy. They have children chanting nursery rhymes out of nowhere, unseen children doing this. They have a woman laughing maniacally that we never see, the doctor, when he leans over a water barrel to get a drink, a hand comes up out of it and tries to drown him.
That was creepy.
And it's all just random creepy stuff, but it is creepy stuff.
Yep. Did you mention the quicksand, the beach?
Well, I mentioned the beach, but yeah, when they go on the beach, the doctor ends up standing on some ground that turns out to be sort of quicksand, and these hands come up out of the ground to pull him under the quicksand. And it actually looks a lot like the visual for the hand mines from Scarrow in New Who.
Right, right. And that's the cliffhanger for the between episodes 13 and 14. So that's we have the doctor emerging from the sand later when Sabalon comes.
Oh, I was also going to mention, so one of the characteristics of Robert Holmes's writing is he satirizes things he hates. And in this, he's satirizing bureaucracy.
Okay, yes.
So that's why we get a lot of on-the-nose lines about bureaucracy.
Right.
The procedure is sacrosanct.
Right. So the Villiard on the beach, we have this discussion between the Villiard and the doctor, and he says the the only reality we can agree on is the ultimate reality of death, the typical evil villain sorts of things. But he says he wants to destroy the Doctor to release him from the Doctor's morality, which is very evil.
And now we're into episode 14.
Yep.
Where the Pip and Jane Baker were handicapped by not knowing what was supposed to happen, and they're just making it up as they go at this point, which is kind of what happens in fiction in general, but usually with a little bit more of a plan.
Right. And so we see that, like, the Doctor ends up in the Master's TARDIS, and the Master zombifies the Doctor to use him as bait for the Valeyard, who then turns the tables on the Master. And so we have this
complicated
series of events. Mel shows up. Yep.
I was going to say, of course, we know it's the Master's TARDIS because it's the same exact set, just painted black.
Right. Not white like the Doctor said. Mel shows up to take the Doctor back to the trial, where this was my first time seeing it. And so as I see her taken back to the trial, I'm thinking, how do you know you're not in the Matrix? Which is the classic trope of any holodeck story or anything like that. What was the movie with the dreaming one with
Inception.
Inception. It's the classic Inception question, right? How do you know you're not dreaming? So she takes him back to the trial, where she's asked if what they saw regarding the Vervoids is true, and the Doctor's sentenced to death. And oh no, how could this possibly be? How can we get out of this now? And it turns out it's all inside the Matrix anyway.
Yeah.
So it's kind of I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit of a cheap cliche, but again, they're working fast as they can to write an episode.
Yeah.
So
and the Doctor also, as he is suddenly agreeing to his execution on the grounds that justice must be done and the rule of law must prevail, and he's been found guilty and stuff like that. And he even starts quoting from A Tale of Two Cities by Dickens. It is a far, far better thing I do than I have ever done, and so forth, which is... That's a line from the character Sidney Carlton in Tale of Two Cities, who is an innocent man who is allowing himself to be falsely executed in someone else's place. And that's why Mel runs up to him at the end and says, enough with the Sidney Carton stuff.
Right. I thought he was quoting Kirk in Wrath of Khan, but that's...
It's a little older than that.
Oh, okay.
But he then says he knew that he chastises Mel for ruining it because he realized his executioner would be the Valeyard, and what he's trying to get is a confrontation with the Valeyard. And he knew all the time that the trial he was in was fake, because Mel knew in the Matrix that he had denied committing genocide, and the real Mel was not in the courtroom when he said that. And so it gave it away that this was all in the Matrix, and he was thus using it to try to get a confrontation with the Valeyard.
So meanwhile, the Master... Okay.
This may be where you were going to go, but the Master is then trying to hypnotize Sabalom
That's
Glitz.
Exactly, yeah.
And we have this awesome scene where the Master and Glitz are in the Master's TARDIS, and the Master pulls out like some kind of jewel on a chain, and starts swinging it back and forth in front of Glitz's face while he and Glitz are talking, and in an obvious attempt to hypnotize him. And it seems to be working, and then the Master is delighted, and the Master says, Sabalom Glitz, can you hear me? Or he says, are you listening to me? And he's about to give him his hypnotized instructions. And when he says, are you listening to me? Glitz says, not really. I'm just wondering how many grotsits that bauble costs.
Yeah.
He snatches the jewel away from the Master.
I like that. The Master's always he can always hypnotize anybody except Glitz, who's hypnotized by wealth first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so then he appeals to his greed and shows him a big treasure chest full of stuff and says, you can have it if you do my bidding. So Glitz ends up finding the memory bank from Mysterious Planet. It's been so long since we watched that I've been I had to go back and look at stuff like, what is this? Because so there was a memory bank that had the secrets from the Matrix that the sleeper astronauts had stolen, and so it's here inside the Matrix now. And so the Master wants it now. So the Doctor also finds a list of the members of the Court of Appeals, I think it is,
No, it's a member of the court itself.
Okay.
Of all the Time Lords that are on the court itself.
Okay.
Is where that list comes from.
And the names are all crossed out and they're in his handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
So the doctor deduces that this is a list that the Valeyard made. So apparently your handwriting doesn't change between generations, I guess. Because this is the doctor's own recognizable handwriting. So.
Not in this case, anyway.
Yeah. So I don't know. It just shows how he's been tampering with the court. And then we find out that Glitz was working with Popowick to betray the doctor in exchange for the memory bank, and he's going to cross the master, who stops him. So we have all of these double crosses and like all of this complicated back and forth, and who's fooling who.
20 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that Popowick is the Valeyard, or at least one instance of Popowick is the Valeyard, because there's several instances of Popowick. We have a particle disseminator. Is it supposed to be like it makes particles separate, or
it's a bomb,
or just distributes?
Yeah. It's just a bomb.
It distributes particles one at a time.
Yeah.
It disseminates them.
and it's a bomb that works through TV screens.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So in
blow it up on this side, it explodes in your living room.
See, now that's actually a clever bomb. Actually, I could see that in a future episode of Doctor Who where they would
overload your TV.
That just no, it like somehow the TV transmits the explosion into the room where the TV is. That's a total Doctor Who device. I'm just saying. So in the courtroom, the keeper of the Matrix reveals that there's been an insurrection at Gallifrey. The High Council's been overthrown. The Masters realize this is his time. He's gonna declare himself the autocrat in charge of Gallifrey and of all the Time Lords. But when he plugs in his memory bank, the thumb drive has been infected with the virus.
Yeah, it's now immobilized. Limbo atrophier, whatever that is.
Yes. Well, it makes everything turn gray and still.
It pushes you against the wall.
Yes. So he's been neutralized.
The Master often ends up getting pushed against walls in Frozen. I mean, that same kind of thing happened in the one where he crossed over with the Ronnie, and they both end up with a baby Tyrannosaur pressed against the wall.
Right. Do we know who sabotaged the Doctor? Like, I mean, the Master? Was it the Doctor? I don't think that ever gets revealed.
If it does, it goes by too quickly, and I didn't care to go back and rewatch and listen hard to try to find out.
Yeah,
I would guess the Valeyard, but again, that's could be headcanon. That could be just kind of he seems the most reasonable choice of who could have done it.
Right. So
the Valeyard also gets one of the most infamous lines in Doctor Who history in this sequence, where because he's been trying to purge the Doctor of his morality, so that he can become the evil Valeyard, I guess. But as the Doctor is trying to defuse the bomb, the Valeyard says, "There is nothing you can do to prevent the catharsis of spurious morality." It's like, wow, those words have meaning normally.
Right. Are you writing a paper on this thing to submit to a journal? I mean, that's very much academic speak. I know some theologians who talk like that. So so yeah, as you mentioned, the Doctor defuses the machine. Well, he causes it to explode, but in the Matrix itself, and it takes the Valeyard with it, or so we think. He ends up not being dead.
It also blows up in the courtroom, but not as devastatingly as might have.
Right. Yep. And when the Doctor gets back to the courtroom, he's told, of course, the charges are dismissed, and the Inquisitor offers him to be the president of Gallifrey again.
Invites him to stand for being president. Sure.
And he declines this time and says, Madam Inquisitor, actually, I think you should run. And so presumably she will.
And in Big Finish, the actress comes back and has lots of adventures.
Oh, funny.
Cool. On Gallifrey.
Every thread gets followed in Big Finish. Let's just put it
almost.
That way. And then this is when we find out that Perry is still alive. And then we get the reveal that the Valeyard is not dead. Like the Master, he's impossible to kill. And he turns around, and there he is standing there in the. Nobody notices that the keeper of the Matrix is no longer the keeper of the Matrix, but is the Valeyard, because, hiding in plain sight.
Well, he's got the collar there that guts over his head, so he just turned his head so that people couldn't see him.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
that's it.
Yes. All right, and that's where we end. That's the end of Colin Baker's time. He and Mel get on board, as you mentioned, go on board the TARDIS, and she's talking about feeding him carrot juice and making him exercise again. And that's probably what drives him to die and regenerate. Actually, you mentioned, Jimmy, that there's a big finish. We will eventually do. About that does the regeneration story. But so that this is the end of Colin Baker on televised Doctor Who, and the end of this season, and so on. So we mentioned we will continue to do Six Doctor stories. We're going to start doing some Big Finish Six Doctor stories starring Colin Baker, just to keep him in the and as you said before, the Big Finish stories are better than the televised ones in general.
Frequently, yeah.
Yeah.
And definitely one to check out is Trial of the Valeyard. So after season 14 or season 23, the 14 episodes of the Valeyard prosecuting the Doctor, in Big Finish, the Valeyard gets put on trial and the Doctor has to defend him. The Sixth Doctor has to defend him, and it's a lot of fun.
Yes,
it is.
I'm just looking up what episode we talk about that. That was our episode 156. So go listen to that, then come back and listen to our discussion of the Trial of the Valeyard.
Also, I've been keeping a log of all the way through our treatment of Series 23 of the variants on the name Valeyard.
Oh, yes.
That the Doctor has used. In Mysterious Planet, he referred to him as the boatyard, the graveyard, the farmyard, and the scrapyard. And Madam Inquisitor warned him not to refer to him as the knacker's yard. I don't know what that would be, but whatever. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Well, knacker's yard was also mentioned by someone. In Mind Warp, he referred to him as the brickyard, and the Madam Inquisitor warned him not to refer to him as the backyard, which is an Americanism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because in England, they would say the back garden.
Yeah.
We would say the backyard. And then in these two episodes, The Ultimate Foe, he gets referred to as the rail yard and the stack yard.
That's right. So a knacker.
And just to remind folks, the name Valeyard is a made-up Gallifreyan word referring to like a noble counselor.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
A knacker is the guy who removed and cleared animal carcasses from private farms or public highways and renders the collected carcasses into byproducts such as fats, tallow, glue, gelatin, bone meal, etc., etc.
So he's a biohazard garbage man. Okay.
Basically. Waste not, want not.
Yeah, indeed.
All right,
Especially
so
in the past.
Final thoughts on The Ultimate Foe, on the Trial of the Time Lord, or the Sixth Doctor? Any of those, Father Cory?
Well, it was a season. This was a conclusion to a season. The Trial of the Time Lord. It's something I had watched many times as a kid. I had it I have it on VCR.
Wow.
It's a two tape season. And I've watched it. It's if you don't take it too seriously, it's kind of fun. But yeah, of course, as you've heard through our conversations, it doesn't stand up to too much scrutiny. But it was all right. I mean, it was when you know the history of what happened behind the scenes and what was going to follow, it's kind of disappointing because the Sixth Doctor kind of started to get a little bit more comfortable in this, but not to the level that obviously he did with Big Finish. So, I mean, it was a season, and this was 2 episodes to close out that season. I will mention in the 13th, the first part of this 2-parter, we've got one of the monologues that's, you see whenever you see a video of different monologues from the Doctor. It's one of the more famous ones where it ends with, "Power mad conspirators, Daleks, Santarans, Cybermen, they're still in the nursery compared to us. 10 million years of absolute power. That's what it takes to be really corrupt."
Yes. Jimmy, your thoughts on all of that?
Well, so what is my brief to comment on?
And final thoughts on this, The Ultimate Foe, the Trial of the Time Lord, and the Sixth Doctor in general.
Okay. So, in regard, it's pretty much the same across the board. There are elements of The Ultimate Foe, Trial of a Time Lord, and The Sixth Doctor's Time that are fun, but it's also profoundly flawed, and it's disappointing. It's just disappointing, and it's going to get better in the Sixth Doctor's time. One of the things that I think
in the Seventh Doctor's time.
I'm sorry, in the Seventh Doctor's time.
Yep.
One of the things that really hampered the Sixth Doctor's time is the direction they chose to go in, of having the Doctor start unlikable and then make him more likable over time. Doctors should be likable right out of the gate. Even if they're bizarre, like Tom Baker, they should be likable from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
It is a serious mistake to make your protagonist unlikable, especially when he in the past has always been likable, and at least within the audience's memory. I mean, I'm accepting William Hartnell in The Unearthly Child. In the one adventure that we got to see Mel as the Doctor's companion, the Vervoid one, I mean, it was not a great adventure, but the chemistry between the Sixth Doctor and Mel worked much better than the chemistry between the Sixth Doctor and Perry.
Yeah.
Partly because of the way they were writing Perry. Perry was constantly complaining about everything, and Mel doesn't. Mel has a spirit of adventure, and she's enjoying herself, and that comes across. And the way that the two of them worked in the Vervoid crisis, I would have liked to see that. I think the Sixth Doctor's time would have been much better if we saw that kind of writing for Colin Baker and his companion throughout his time. It would have worked much better. And in Big Finish has given him much more of that kind of writing, and he's actually been a very popular Doctor on Big Finish.
I would have to say, like, for me, watching all of this for the first time, the Sixth Doctor time, the sixth, by the end of this season, the Sixth Doctor was finally getting good. He was no longer as obnoxious as he was in the beginning. He was more likable. Still a little bombastic, but that's the Doctor. And I mean, we were finally, I think, on the edge of having something good, and that's when they pulled the plug on poor Colin Baker. When we were finally starting to get there. And I was just looking at the dates from the regeneration of the Fifth Doctor, that was in March of 1984, to the beginning of the Seventh Doctor, the regeneration into the Seventh Doctor. There's like a 3.5 year period in which we get just a handful of Doctor Who stories in these two seasons, 22 and season 22, season 23. And really one story essentially in season 23. And it's just like, it felt like this was the, perhaps what really struck a blow to the popularity of the Doctor and kind of foretold the end that was coming for it. I mean, they had lost steam, I would think.
When we complain about, modern Who having only, a 10 to 14 episodes per season. Well, this was a 14 episode season, but at least with Modern Who, they're 45-minute long episodes.
Right.
These were half as long. So there really was the equivalent of a 7 episode season today.
Right. Which is what we got with the last season of, the Flux.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's also an interesting, it was a season long story arc, which is something that Modern Who has picked up with a vengeance.
Well, but unfortunately, they Modern Who does it better. Courtroom 14 episode courtroom drama where you don't even have an overarching legal thing driving it forward. I mean, if I'm fine with courtroom dramas. 12 Angry Men is overrated though. But I'm in principle I'm fine with having courtroom legal dramas. Even science fiction ones. A good example of that is the book Fuzzy Nation by John Scalzi. It is a sort of sci-fi comedy that turns into a serious courtroom drama, and it is really good. The legal maneuvering is outstanding. and very entertaining, and it keeps you intellectually engaged, as opposed to the trial we get here,
Right.
which is what we've really got is 3 independent stories that have had this trial narrative slapped on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no coherent legal case that's being made. Instead, we just have a bunch of courtroom grandstanding by the Valeyard and the doctor and the Madam Inquisitor. And the legal case doesn't advance. It's just a lot of bombastic verbal wheel spinning. And that's the lazy, cliched way to write courtroom stuff for television, and I find that particularly unfortunate.
Yeah. You know, I'm just looking at the 2 seasons of stories, and if I were to pick, I would say my favorite of the 6 Doctor time is the 2 Doctors, which is ironic given that it's really what makes that great is the 2nd Doctor and Jamie McCrimmon. But
Pretty much.
But I would pick those as that one is my favorite of the time. Plus the setting. I like that they went to Spain and they had it on location, and it was something special as opposed to running around a BBC studio set. But
yeah. Speaking of that, that sequence or that story, like all of the others for the 6th Doctor, gets mentioned in the Sycorax Rock One Night on Varos, which we'll have at the end of this episode. And be sure to not just listen to and enjoy the song, but go to Andy Hicks's channel on YouTube. It's called Sycorax Rock, and watch the video, because he not only makes this song, which is a parody of One Night in Bangkok, but he also matches it to footage from the 6th Doctor's time, and it's a really creative video and a really fun song. I particularly I remember One Night in Bangkok being on the radio back in the 80s when this season of Doctor Who was on the air, and it was a popular song, and I really like what Andy's done with it to turn it into Doctor Who.
Excellent.
So let's get to our listener feedback. We had feedback on our recent episode 282 on Robot of Sherwood. And our first feedback comes from Mark, who wrote on our Facebook page, I heard you announce that your next show will be about the Mask of Mandragora. And this is the very first Doctor Who story I ever watched, and it remains an all-time favorite. Sadly, I never could convince my wife that giving one of our children a middle name of Hieronymus would be awesome.
Aww.
If you like the name Hieronymus, you should definitely watch the Amazon Prime series Bosch, where the main character is Hieronymus Bosch or Harry Bosch. So check that out. Then he also says on Robot of Sherwood, so many stupid things in this episode, but still fun if you watch it like it's a fable or fairy tale. Jenna Coleman looked absolutely stunning in her period dress and long hair.
Jenna Coleman looks stunning in anything.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. It is Jenna Coleman.
Or even, I'm sure she would. Never mind.
Don't go there. Let's keep this a family-friendly episode, but I know what you were saying. Then, moving on, Bennett Gillespie on Facebook writes, I didn't personally find this episode any more exciting than you did. The cultural reference for me as a Brit didn't make it any more delightful. So good.
Darn.
Thanks, Bennett. All right, so we were also going to talk about some Doctor Who news, and the big news is we know that there's a new 14th Doctor. We talked about him, the actor who's going to be playing the 14th Doctor last time, I think it was. But there's also been some news about another Doctor. The 10th Doctor, David Tennant, is returning to screen along with Catherine Tate as Donna Noble, and Bernard Cribbins as Wilfred Mott, one of my favorites of all time.
Yay.
In a special, is it a special for the 60th anniversary of the BBC?
Well, it's at least that.
Or the 100th anniversary of the BBC.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
no. The regeneration...
the regeneration episode is the 100th anniversary of the BBC.
Of the BBC.
And that's
this is
November.
This November. Next year, there will be the
60th anniversary of the
60th
Doctor.
anniversary of Doctor Who.
Right.
And David Tennant is back for that. There are also rumors of other things like Christmas specials before the next full season kicks off. And I've heard rumors of as many as 3 specials that David Tennant may be involved in the gap. The question is how, and Russell T Davies has confirmed that Tennant and Noble are going to be back, or that the 10th Doctor and Donna Noble are going to be back, Catherine Tate. But he's deliberately left it vague about how that's going to happen, because like, how can Donna see the Doctor again without her mind burning? And apparently they're going to have some solution for that. And apparently the husband she got married to in her departure, or after her departure, really, it was in the End of Time during the sequence where the Doctor is visiting his former companions. She was getting married then. She's still married to that guy. He's going to appear.
Okay.
Unit is allegedly supposed to appear, and they're supposed to have a daughter named Rose.
Right.
Presumably because she's got this name Rose in her subconscious and doesn't know why she's always liked that name.
Right.
So nothing to do with Rose Tyler directly. But what I'm wondering, and I've seen some interesting speculation on that I think would be really cool if they do it, involves the way that David Tennant gets involved. Now, I've commented for some time when they announced, okay, we're going to have the regeneration at the end of 2022. We're going to have the 60th anniversary special, and then we're going to have another season with the 14th Doctor, who's played by Ncuti Gatwa. And I said to myself, thinking as a writer, how do you do that? Because 60th, decadal anniversaries of Doctor Who have tended to involve multiple Doctors. And if you've just had the regeneration into Ncuti Gatwa, and that's the time we need to get to knowing him.
Right.
How do you, and you don't want to have multiple other Doctors come in and step all over, who are better known, and step all over his first appearance.
Right.
And so I thought to myself, how, there are ways they can solve that, but the way that I've seen speculated and that seems consistent with the data that is currently public is there's going to be something that goes wrong with Jodie Whittaker's regeneration. And instead of regenerating into the 14th Doctor, she degenerates back into the 10th. And then he must figure out what went wrong and how to fix it over one or more specials in order to accomplish the natural progression to Ncuti Gatwa. And so that would solve the problem much more nicely and organically than if we suddenly cut away in time to the 10th Doctor for no reason, or if the 10th Doctor suddenly intrudes on things.
So this is how it's going to happen. In the regeneration special with the 14th Doctor, she's going to regenerate, going to have all the Artron radiation, and then it's going to finish, and it's going to be David Tennant sitting there, and he's going to go, "What? What?"
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally going to do that. What?
We may also get flashes of other Doctors in the degeneration process. We could see the 12th Doctor and the 11th Doctor momentarily before we see the 10th Doctor.
Maybe even the 9th Doctor. That would be awesome. I would love to see
that. I doubt.
Because it's Russell T Davies. Yeah.
That, and also, now he has recently at a convention expressed some openness to televise Doctor Who before, but not for the 60th anniversary. He said that the 9th Doctor is a one-man band, and if you want the 9th Doctor, it needs to be just him. He's not interested in doing multi-Doctor things where he only gets a tiny portion of the overall dialogue and focus.
Yeah.
But depending on whether there are also indications. Now, Matt Smith has indicated he's open to doing Doctor Who in the future, although he's been trying to get a Hollywood career going.
Yeah.
And there have been, I think, Peter Capaldi may have been seen in Cardiff recently. Also, some of the other Doctors have, but some of the classic Doctors. But we'll have to see. A lot of this is still up in the air, but I suspect the degeneration idea is correct, because
Right.
that not only fits the current data, but it's an organic, elegant solution to how do you get classic Doctors back for the 60th and not step all over Schuette's debut.
Right, right. And I'm sure it's going to have something to do with the Timeless Child story and all of that too.
Well, according to some of the alleged leaks, and these fan leaks are highly unreliable.
Who knows? Yeah.
But according to some of them, by the end of the special, the Regeneration special, she does open the pocket watch.
Oh, okay. And maybe that's what comes out of it is, that
could affect her regeneration.
Right, especially since it was the 11th Doctor the 10th Doctor who used the pocket watch, the chameleon circuit thing. Chameleon Arch or whatever it is. Yeah.
Well,
Chameleon Arch. Yeah.
Chameleon Arch, and then the pocket watch undoes it.
Yeah.
Right.
So interesting.
Yeah, the only thing I think we really know for sure is that they are coming back, and that the 10th Doctor's got a different outfit, and obviously Donna and Wilf are both much older. So beyond that, it's all speculation.
I've seen some like photos of people take of the set, like people in buildings nearby shooting down from the windows of the Doctor pushing Wilf in a wheelchair. Because Bernard Cribbins is 90. I mean, the poor guy's
he's older. He's older than 90. He's like 93 or 94.
Yeah, he's up there. So I just love the idea that he's back. So one of my favorites. All right, I think that should do it. We'd like to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who, including Andy F., Andrew P., David H., Jordan B., and Robert R. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edited this episode. So we'd love to hear what you think of The Ultimate Foe, this 2-part episode, or the whole Trial of a Time Lord series, or the whole 6th Doctor story, or whatever's coming up with Doctor Who. We want to hear it all, so we want all your feedback. Let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com, or at the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com, or join the conversation that we're having over at the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 12th Doctor story, The Caretaker. Until then, Jimmy Akin, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, but there's nothing you can do to prevent the catharsis of spurious morality.
Thank you, Maths. Father Cory Sticha, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, for a lie to work, it must be shrouded in truth.
It's me. Who are you expecting? Does the galaxy know what the galaxy is getting? The creme de la creme of the Time Lords in a show with everything but Brian Blessed. Oh, look. We've got him, too. Time flies. Nothing's off the table since my last regeneration. I'm a bit unstable. Bombast. I need to prove my mettle, so I'm dragging Perry off to someplace dreadful. It's Jaconda, or Telos, or Shoreditch, or this place.
One night in there was the world's your marshmallow. Too bad the Zacks on 7 or 8 free. You'll find the Perry's a fine feathered friend though, and you don't wanna know what's on TV. I can feel the silver sliding up to me.
One world's very like another. Even Earth's got mysteries to uncover. It's a mob, it's a riot, they're causing a commotion. Gotta help George Stevenson do the locomotion. What do you mean? You meet one amoral renegade time lady.
That's me, am I okay? Gonna end up in an Energon souffle.
This pains me to say aloud, but I'm dripping sweat from my noble brow. Perry, from now on, we are strict vegetarians.
One night a necro's killed by your own headstone. His legacy sails to keep you company.
arrest. The BBC announced today that
The Time Lord, who's been on our screens for
About 22 years now.
will be off the earth.
Courtroom burning like an ember, but the evidence isn't how I remember. Where's Perry? Don't you know I hate tricks? And oh, there's the master speaking from the Matrix. Thank Rassilon, he's just observing this thing, trolling it. I'm quite annoyed, I'll fight. This is how I dealt with the Vervoid crisis. These records I'll dispute, for you should know I improve in future. So it's time to get back to my carrot juice. Carrot juice, carrot juice.
One night unravel locks to feel the earth move. And you find a book about Canadian geese. One night I thought a spade of sail might get you. A little line would never bothered me. Maybe King Arachnos can save poor Perry. One time the value tried to steal my life though. Chasing through